Night story. I want you to tell my story because I would like people to be careful with this. You never know how far-reaching the things you say or wish for can be. A few years ago, I was alone in my room reading a novel assigned for a university workshop. The thing is, I was so tired. That day had been bad, vomiting, headaches, while I was still trying to keep up with my university responsibilities. By that point, I knew when the urge to vomit was coming because it started with a strange spasm in my stomach that grew until the nausea and disgust I started to feel made me run to the bathroom. It was around 11 at night. I had been apparently stable for nearly 3 hours when suddenly I felt a horrible chill down my spine that ended with a tingling in my head. Everything was spinning as if I were about to faint. The spasm started again. I felt so much frustration and rage that what I did was yell the following expression: "I hate my life." And it was as if I had been hit hard on the head. A minute later, I collapsed on the bed, exhausted. When I woke up, it was morning. I was sweaty and burning with fever, but I didn't feel that bad. In fact, the headache was gone. But from the amount of sweat on my clothes and the bed, I guessed I'd had a high temperature for hours. Even so, not an hour passed before I was completely fine. Well, that's what I thought, because that's when my torment began. I was standing in front of the mirror getting ready for class when, out of nowhere, I started feeling a strange discomfort as if something was annoying me. I didn't understand what it was, but I later realized that what I was actually feeling was that something was watching me. I got extremely upset because I didn't understand what was happening. That time I went out and it was an ordeal. The whole time I felt like I had someone 2 steps behind me, following me with their gaze, stalking me, spying on me everywhere. I remember that in a moment of desperation, I went into the university bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and cried silently because it was all so confusing and it was driving me crazy. I don't know if it was because of my nerves, but at one point while I had my head looking down at the floor, I saw the shadow of a person approach from under the door and they knocked 3 times. I said the bathroom was occupied. But they knocked again, this time harder, as if they were kicking it. I got so angry that I yelled that it was occupied to find another damn stall. When I said that, a girl who was in there came over to ask me if I was okay. I told her no, that I was feeling very bad and that it made me really angry that someone couldn't understand a bathroom was occupied. She told me that in the bathroom, it was just her and me, and that she had just come in when she heard me yelling. My reaction was to fall silent, run my hands over my head, and take a deep breath to try to calm down. That's when I started to get seriously worried. The next thing happened on the bus back to my apartment. I was sitting in a middle seat, looking out the window, when I swear I saw the reflection of someone sitting down next to me, an obese older man in ragged clothes like a homeless person. It felt so real. I felt the seat next to me creak with the man's weight, even his shoulder brushed against mine as he sat down. But when I turned around almost immediately, there was no one there. Just a woman in the diagonal seat who turned suddenly as if she had sensed something. The woman looked at me, confused, almost like she wanted to say something, but she just rubbed her chest with a strange look on her face and leaned back in her seat. That night, my apartment was the first of many nights of torment. From the moment I entered, I didn't feel at peace for a single second. The whole time I felt slow footsteps behind me, the exhale of a tired breath coming from the walls, a stench on my things as if a filthy animal had rolled around on them. The worst was when I went to bed. I called my grandmother, distressed, saying I wanted to come back home because I was feeling very unwell. Over the phone, she started to pray and asked me to pray with her. I started feeling heavy again until I fell asleep that night. In my dreams, my head was a collapse of invasive thoughts and a strange voice, as if someone were whispering things in my ear. For some reason, in my dream, I saw someone standing in front of my bed, watching me. I thought it was sleep paralysis because I wanted to move my body but couldn't. But it was really something else because at one point the person there came closer, put their face near mine, and stroked my cheek with their hand. I woke up then and managed to see the silhouette leaning beside the bed, and although I was drowsy and the image was blurry, I could make it out as the same appearance of the old man I had seen in the bus window's reflection. When I fully reacted, there was no one there, but I did see that on the floor there was a little pile of ash. That's when I realized the smell flooding the room was the smell of cigarettes, even though I have never smoked in my life. I couldn't sleep that night from panic. I spent it praying with the television at full volume so I wouldn't be tormented by what I was feeling. That was the first of almost 2 weeks of torment because the siege was torture. On those nights, you couldn't even close your eyes. I couldn't even shower properly because sometimes I felt someone approach and touch my hair or whisper something to me. There were nights I was lying calmly in bed looking at my phone when suddenly I felt someone lie down next to me. The mattress creaked and sank as if a heavy person was settling onto it. My grandmother realized something was wrong one night while she was in my room talking to me. At one point she was terrified, watching little piles of cigarette ash fall onto the nightstand out of nowhere. By that time, I had already been going to church for several days and talking with the town priest, who had helped me a lot to control the manifestations through prayer. Even so, I didn't fully understand what was happening. But one time we were there at the church door. I was bringing him some things my grandmother had sent as a thank you when suddenly someone came up behind me, grabbed my arm roughly, and pulled me hard. I remember the priest's eyes widened in amazement. He stood frozen. When I turned around, I found myself face to face with a horrifying man. His face was gaunt, covered in scabs, his eyes were yellow. It was the same old man I had seen in my dreams. The same smell that always followed me. The same presence. I let out a terrified scream, and the priest immediately grabbed my other arm and told me to calm down, that everything was going to be okay. When he said that, I hugged him and started to cry. He told me, "Start praying. Now for real. I finally understand what's happening to you. But this ends today." It took almost 2 hours. We went into the church. I felt like I was in the middle of one of my deliriums. I was sweating buckets, my face was burning, my eyes hurt to the point I wanted to tear them out. It was so intense that at some point I said I wanted to die. The priest, I don't know how, seemed to sense what was going through my head, because just when I wanted to give up and throw it all away, he would grab my face and tell me the whole time to look him in the eyes, to push away every evil thought, to follow God's voice. And while he looked at me, he kept turning toward the church door with a worried look on his face. I didn't know what he was seeing, but I felt that presence. It was the same one that had been following me. It was out there waiting for me. At some point, when I finally managed to calm down, the priest began to read a passage from the Bible and asked me in a loud voice, while holding my arm, if it was my will to renounce any spiritual pact I might have made before and receive God's blessing. He had never asked me that the other times he helped me pray. When I said yes, the whole atmosphere changed. I felt calmer, like when you've been carrying a heavy purse for a long time and you suddenly put it down. The priest told me he hadn't seen anyone grab my arm, but he did see that the movement of my body backward was almost inhuman. He also said that the whole time we were together, he saw a woman dressed in black in the distance, someone he had never seen in town. This same woman stood outside the church door while we were in the middle of the liberation. But when I said I renounced any pact, she simply left. Over time, by researching, consulting, and sharing my testimony, I found that when we are sick, we are spiritually vulnerable. That cursing is a dangerous habit that can bring undesirable things into our lives. Maybe that's what happened to me. That a diabolical entity latched onto me in that moment when I cursed being alive.